Hi, everybody. My name is Mendoza. Yay, I'm getting some responses on the chat. If you get a chance, we just wanted to know what campus you're on and also what department you're from. Yay. Oh, nursing. Wonderful. So we're in the same college. Hooray. So I'm going to go ahead and start if that's okay. So we can have, and then if people drop in, I know it's lunchtime. People are getting out of their 12:50 classes. So we'll jump in, and if people want to join, they'll ask questions as we go along. So my name is Mendoza. I am a Wesley Legacy faculty member, meaning I'm from Wesley College original, and then now we're in the new Wesley College, Health and Behavior Sciences, and I'm in the Department of Psychology. I wanted to do my talk on sense and sensibility, balancing grace and grades for student success and retention. And my plan for today in our time together is to reflect on how we currently balance our grace and our grades, grace periods if we have any, or any time that we make concessions to students and why, and also what we grade them on and how often we grade them. I also, because being psychology, I wanted to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence and how that works in the workplace here at DSU. We're also going to take an emotional intelligence quiz later on in our time together and review insight principles that the CTL made up in their effective teaching handout, and then complete a worksheet kind of summarizing and putting everything that we've talked about together at the end of our talk. So Sense and Sensibility, I'm a big Jane Austen fan, and I also happen to be watching Bridgerton. I'm a big fan of Bridgerton as well. If you're familiar with Bridgerton, that is how I got the inspiration for this talk. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the sense piece, the IQ or the competence that we bring in as professors to our work, and then also what happens when our emotions get in the way of that and how our emotions can play a part in how we teach and how we interact with our students. And so some psychology is a little bit of background to kind of let you know where I was thinking about this. So our frontal lobe, which is in the very front of our brain, we actually have two of them, the left frontal lobe and the right frontal lobe, is in charge of our performance and action. So anytime that we want to do anything, like grade students' work, talk to students, email students, we're using our frontal lobe, the part of the cerebral cortex that lies at the front of the human brain, to enable us to plan and perform actions. And specifically, the very, very front part, the foremost part of our frontal lobe, is called a prefrontal cortex. And our prefrontal cortex is developing even now, even at our various ages. And it allows us to have executive functions. Executive functions allow people to think before they act and consider consequences. And there are different types of executive functions. I wanted to talk about 8 that are probably going to be the most applicable in what we do as professors in a day-to-day functioning. So one of them is self-control. Do we stop and think before acting, especially when we see an email from a student, maybe a student that we don't particularly like, or a student we have no idea who they are because they're not coming to our classes? Do we temper what we say in the email instead of reacting? Do we have that emotional control? We're going to talk a lot about emotional intelligence today, the ability to manage feelings to achieve our own goals and complete tasks. And sometimes this doesn't even have anything to do with students, but our day-to-day tasks. So our day-to-day tasks include going to meetings. Sometimes we're not necessarily going to meetings for our own volition. We're voluntold that we're part of this committee or another committee. And so how do we control our emotions when we have to do those kinds of tasks? Self-monitoring, the ability to view and evaluate oneself in the way that we're doing things, what worked, what didn't. Flexibility, the ability to adapt to changing conditions by revising plans or changing strategies. And, working at DSU, I think we know a lot about flexibility and changing our routines and flowing and going with the flow. Other types of executive functions we do as professors and staff members, because I know people here also may be on because they want to go into teaching or are teaching right now, but they're in a staff role and they're adjuncting or they have a couple of classes that they want to teach. Task initiation, the ability to start and finish tasks without procrastinating. Organization, the ability to develop and use systems to keep track of materials and information. And as professors, there's a lot of that, isn't there? We have to keep track of which class is which students is in which class, especially if they don't tell us on an email. And then they're talking about they emailed you this assignment and that assignment, but that's been due a long time ago. So you have to keep track of different things. And then working memory, the ability to use information held in memory to complete a task. This one, not so great for me. I have to write everything down. So a student comes up to me at the end of class and says, Dr. Mendoza, I really want to talk to you about, jobs after grad school. I teach some graduating seniors. And I say, okay, great. I need to email you about that. And then I forget because I don't write it down. So we'll talk about some strategies on how to do your job a little bit better in the context of sense and sensibility. And then lastly here, planning and time management, the ability to create steps to reach a goal. So if you want to, let's say, get tenure, get promotion in the next year or so, what are the steps, right? Backwards planning that you have to do in order to get that. And hopefully this talk will give us some ideas of how we can balance grace and grades to give us that time management and to help us with our policies. So altogether, these are the 8 executive functions, again, found in our frontal lobe. So why I'm emphasizing our frontal lobe is because this is the part of our brain that helps us make decisions and also helps us, when people think about common sense, that's what they often are thinking with the frontal lobe, those executive functions. So I'm going to ask you to think about your frontal lobe and think about the way that you make decisions. And we're going to hopefully have a discussion either by chat or if you want to unmute yourself. But I want to ask these 5 questions. What is the graded work you give to students? Where do you show the work to students? How often do you give graded work to students? When and how often do you grade the work? And then what happens when students do not do the work by the due date? Okay, so we're going to talk about the first question. And I'll give you some examples of what I do, and then I'll open it back up to you. So what is the graded work you give to students? And then where do you show the work to students? So for me, I go into my syllabus, and I know that uses probably our frontal lobes because when we're planning our syllabus, we have our executive functions, we're organizing, we have a course, a calendar, we want to make decisions about what we're going to do for the semester. So this is an example of what I have in my syllabus, and it answers those first 2 questions. What is the graded work I give to students? And they're outlined here. My work is out of 500 points. And they're broken down by points and percentages. And I also provide an indication of where I want the students to show their work. So for class participation, I expect them to come to class and they're going to be in person. So for me, to give some context, all my classes are in person. I teach in downtown DSU. I'm in the Department of Psychology, and all of our classes are either in Longwood Hall or Cannon Hall or College Center. Here in downtown DSU. And so when I expect them to go to class, I expect an in-person submission of the work they're doing that day. And that counts for a certain amount of their grades. For everything else, I have a Blackboard submission. So that's telling them what their graded work is, as well as where to show their work. And I don't take assignments or quizzes via email because it gets lost in the shuffle, and I tell my students that, and so everything has to be submitted by Blackboard. All right, so I'm going to be quiet, and can we have you share? So I think Cynthia's here, Amy's here, Laura's here, Michelle's here, and Chet's here. What is the graded work you give to students, and then where do you show the work to students? Can I get some of your input there? Oh, and I think Erica's also here. Sorry, Erica, you were on my other screen. Feel free to mute. Michelle, go ahead.
Oops. Hi.
Hello.
So my graded work is it's normally an exam. It's normally discussion board posts. And it depends on which class, whether or not it's a class for that's an online course or an hybrid course, or if it's in person. So it varies depending on, which format. But most times it is my graded work. It's normally the exam, the discussion board posts and quizzes and assignments, written
And
work.
then, do you take email submissions or everything has to be on?
No,
Yes.
no, I tell them everything has to go through Blackboard. And they can find all of their assignments on the syllabus. The syllabus mirrors the Blackboard course, whatever you call it, the course, whatever. Um, you know what I'm
Grade
talking
book.
about.
I think it's the grade
Yeah.
book.
So
Yeah.
everything, I try to get everything to mirror each other so they won't catch me in a lie.
Mm,
Because normally, if they see one thing on a syllabus and then one thing on
yep.
Blackboard, then they're ready to go in and ask me why things are the way they are. So I
Mhm.
normally try to make sure things mirror each other.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's
Mhm.
a really good point. Everything is here. It's going to be mirrored on Blackboard. And then
Mhm.
sometimes even if I open up a quiz and if they're not ready, and we're going to talk about the course calendar in a second, but if I open up a quiz too early, they'll also out, they'll let you know, right? They'll let you know. I think Amber has her hand up.
So I was gonna say for me, I actually front load all my well when I do teach, right? So I teach the doctoral students, and so I front load all my assignments because we're 8 weeks. So I front
Mm,
load all my assignments at the beginning of the course. It's better for them, it's better for me. And then I don't accept anything on outside of Blackboard. So everything has to be submitted in Blackboard, and I tell them, the date that I give you the due date, right? I'm kind of flexible. So I say the due date is if you want feedback back. So if you want
mm,
your feedback to redo your assignment to improve your grade, I would prefer you get it in by that day. If you think you want to take the gamble, then the last day to take assignments would be whatever date that I set at the end of that 8 week period.
mm,
But again, like I tell them, my schedule is crazy. So I have the due dates in place for a reason. And
mhm.
that allows me to give you feedback to be able to return that work back to me to redo it in the event that you want to improve your grade. If not, great. But that's just kind of how I do it. But I will say the challenge comes in where it was in the past, right? A lot of the students weren't actually registered for the course, and
Mm,
so they were not able to actually submit in Blackboard. And so, what I was having them do, I was telling them I wasn't taking anything until you were actually completely registered
right.
because I felt like I wasn't going to take the time to grade it, but I couldn't give
Yeah,
you a final grade on the course anyway. So you need
sure.
to handle whatever logistics. My advice is that you do the assignments. So once you are registered, you can
Mhm.
just drop them into Blackboard and get your grade back. But so that's kind of how I handled that part.
Great. I like your strategies to front load everything. You teach online doctoral students. And it's a very fast paced course. And I think for me, I know with introduction to psychology students as well, even my graduating seniors, I like to do it week by week. So that I believe, and I've gotten feedback from my students, they find it overwhelming when everything is there. Because remember, 16 weeks, that's a lot of
Yeah,
things
that is a long time.
for 8 weeks. Absolutely, you only have 8 weeks and you want to make sure. And then some professors, they make their course that you can go ahead, right? Like you can
Yeah,
go through module. Other professors have to do it module by module. But if you only have 8 weeks, there's time in those 8 weeks to go and
yeah,
work forward. Yeah. Chat, I see your hand.
Yeah, no, I will not take time because Amber didn't cite me, but she told everything what I do. So so the most important part in graduate program, what Amber mentioned, is if we do not front load, we cannot make them complete those large, really large projects, and most of them
Mm,
are research projects. So
absolutely.
other things are like a lot of other assignments, just like what you mention in your share screen your assignment tab, the same way I have set up and we have set up all the assignments in Blackboard and our syllabi. That's the place where it exists. And then some of the things are weekly in my case. And some of the largest projects are pretty much introduced in very first week and they last for another 8 weeks.
Yep.
So that's how I do it. And grading part is some of the research assignments I accept not only in Blackboard, I accept the working document in email because sometimes I have very small number of students, I can manage them. And because they have to show me the progression somehow, in that case, I check the emails. Otherwise, I just get their final in Blackboard and give feedback in Blackboard.
True. Yes, that's a great point as well, because in Blackboard, there is, right, the only, you upload or create the submission and you don't get to grade everything through the progression. And I understand that as well. It depends on the class. I teach a senior research seminar and you're right, I have to do multiple assignments. It's the same assignment, but you're adding on and adding on and adding on. But I have more time to do that because it's 16 weeks versus 8 weeks. In our, we have some Laura and Amy are on the chat. They said one class is all exams, the other class has exams and papers, and work is submitted through Blackboard. I've had a few issues with Blackboard. You're absolutely right. Sometimes Blackboard doesn't let them upload or it's stuck uploading. And so, yes, that's when, and we're going to talk about that with the grace part. So now we're talking about the grades. We're going to talk about in the grace part, what are some things that we do to accommodate students' needs? So yes, if they have an issue with Blackboard, you have to email them, but it's a fail-safe, that's not a rule. And then Amy said graded work, quizzes and discussion board. All assignments are located on syllabus in each module. And some students have had issues also with Blackboard. Yes, so they can prove their issues. That's the key. Give me a screenshot, give me proof. So I will email me directly. All right, excellent. Thank you for that input. I wanted to also further our talk with how often do we give graded work to students. So we know what we want them to do, those long semester projects right from the get-go. You front load all the assignments. I have a statement in my syllabus. I found this in my, when I was doing the AQ, I have a what graded work is due and when, and then also when I'm going to put them up. So I have a course calendar, and this is only going through the midterm, but I will tell them what's on the midterm grade report. And again, I teach 16 weeks, so I have time to go and see that midterm. I tell them also when the quizzes will open, and I have the luxury of doing that week by week because I have 16 weeks versus only 8 weeks, you might have to open everything at once, right? Or if you want weekly discussion boards, you may open them with those different capabilities, right? You'll have to do one before you do the other, etc. So I tell them quizzes will be open at least 2 days before their due dates. We have the units that we do, and then assignments will be open at least 1 week before their due dates. And then I already give a grace period, and that's embedded into my course calendar. Everything is due on a Friday, but if they need to, they have until the next Tuesday for that grace period. And then I don't accept any work after that time, meaning that the assignment will go away. It won't even be visible on Blackboard. Cynthia, you were going to say something? No, okay, gotcha. So that's how often do you give graded work to students? So some of you have talked about weekly, some of you talked about everything through the semester. And I give all of my graded work on a weekly basis. All right. Does anyone want to say how often do you give graded work? Is it every week? Is it every day? I know for online, it's there the whole semester. Anyone else teaching in person, they want to talk about when they give the graded work or how often do you give the graded work? Okay. So my next question is when and how often do you grade the work? So for that, I have a statement in my syllabus that actually tells them, do I have an arrow? No, right here, return graded out of class work between 7 to 21 business days. I know for online, you have to be very quick about that because you only have 8 weeks. For me, because I have 40 plus students in my intro classes, and I have 2 of them. And then, so I have a lot of students, and I do give out slideshow assignments. I give out assignments and papers, papers meaning they have to do the slideshows as well as quizzes. I need that time so I can make sure I have everybody's grade in. So I wanted to see, this was something that I read in AQ when I was taking the course, and it talked about what can students expect from their instructor in the course. And I'm wondering if anybody else does this, what you're gonna do as the professor, like a statement of what your responsibilities are. Does anybody do this? And if not, then at least can we answer that question? When and how often do you grade the work that you're asking of the students?
In my case, I think what I do is I try not to let the material there for more than a week because I have a smaller number. Another thing is for those large research projects, sometime we have to wait for longer and much more longer time. So basically, I try not to wait for so long. And sometimes I have to give grace to myself, honestly speaking. Right now I have like 12 dissertation students. You can imagine the work, though it doesn't look like in the teaching load, it is 10 times more than teaching load. So
Oh,
it becomes a different story sometime. But yes, I try to grade them within a week or so if the material is there. But we are very flexible in grad education grad program in this submission things. We are not like you must complete it right now. These are professionals who are working full time and trying to do their degrees. That's what I would like to add.
Sure. And I think also when you get them, and sometimes this is just kind of giving us some consideration of when we set aside time to grade, right? So when you get the work, how long will it take you to grade the work? How long are you going to give the feedback back? Is there a conversation? And I know for doctoral students and graduate master's students, that process is going to be very different than an undergrad who has a quiz or an undergrad who has like a 1-page paper. They have a 10-page paper. Amy said on the chat, try to keep up with grading every Sunday, but sometimes it can take to 2 weeks. And I understand how often you're giving them the graded work. We also need to be mindful they want to see that work graded in a timely manner as well. So for me, I try to do it every Wednesday and Friday. And those are my, I don't have a very long day those times, but sometimes depending on talks or meetings, we're going to get pushed back as well. But yeah, so that's why I have that range. That's why I have that range here of 7 to 21 business days from the forefront. And I say that in the syllabus so that they can expect a week all the way to 3 weeks. Excellent. All right. And that lastly, what happens when students do not do the work by the due date? So Chad already said in graduate program, there's flexibility there. For undergrads, depending on how often you want that graded work and they don't get too far behind, something that I know has helped me and the students is confidence coupons. I call them confidence coupons. So I give those grace periods at a weekly interval. However, sometimes they may have a car accident. They may have a family issue. They may have a sickness and they can't do the work during that week. And Michelle just put Sunday afternoons and Monday mornings are her grading days. Yes. So we have designated grading days when we have the work in. When we don't have the work in, we have to adjust our schedules. And then we have to make sure we also maybe work with the student. For me, these confidence coupons have helped when there are Blackboard issues with the quizzes, when there are Blackboard issues with the assignments, I give extensions in addition to those grace periods. However, they can only use these 4 and they can't give a coupon to somebody else, right? So if their roommate or there's somebody else in the class has missed 2 assignments, they can't give theirs. These coupons are non-exchangeable, right? And they have to do it within a certain amount of time. For For in-person 16-week courses, because we have topics that we're learning every single week that build on previous knowledge, it doesn't make sense for them to put all of their assignments at the end of the semester. They have to do their assignments in a timely manner. So, and if they don't do it within 7 days of the original due date, they lose that opportunity and they have a 0. And I think, and I believe, and I've gotten feedback from students, they know everything's due on a Friday. They know there's a grace period, and they know they can use a confidence coupon. We have, and I don't have the data for this semester, but we have a low number that don't do their assignment at all. Yep, and they do try to complete everything at the end. But from the get-go, from the syllabus, we have a conversation with the confidence coupons, and they can't do that in the class. So that's a conversation that we've had. So going back to sense and sensibility. So we've discussed our syllabus, which is what we use our sense for, right? Our common sense. We have our decision-making part of the brain. What about our emotions? So if students give you the excuses, if students give you their reasons for not doing work on time, or if they try to complete everything at the end, there's another part of our brain called the amygdala. And it's a little almond shape right here on the bottom of your screen near the hippocampus. And the amygdala is the feeling aspect of our consciousness. Oftentimes when we read emails from students, or oftentimes when students want to talk to us after class and they have some things that are coming up, but they expect you to solve their problems for them, we might not be using our forebrain at that time. We might be using our emotion center, which is our amygdala, the neural clusters that are components of the limbic system, and they are linked to our emotion. They're in charge of our emotional perception as well as our emotional expression. And why I bring that up is because when we get messages like this, sometimes the information doesn't reach our forebrain and our frontal lobe. It doesn't give us emotional control. We're ready to react with our amygdala. So one of my students, even though I told them about the due dates are in the syllabus, they still, and we have already talked about no submissions via email. He wrote me an email, good afternoon, I've been trying to submit assignment 3 since the due date. I don't know if it's a Wi-Fi thing, but it won't allow me to. And here's an email, right? With it attached, even though we said Blackboard submission, nothing. And so this might be the Blackboard issue, right? Another student, hello, this message was sent when I tried to submit assignment 3. It's not past the due date, so I don't understand why it won't allow me to submit. I look at the time they sent the email. Everything is due for me at 11:59. That email was sent at 1 o'clock in the morning. Of course, it's past the due date, but that's what they said, right? So again, trying to get my emotions in check before I respond to emails. And then lastly, another student said, I was trying to submit that assignment before 11:59, but it just disappeared. And I told you that for me, because there's a grace period, the due date's on Friday, the grace period's on Tuesday, it will disappear because the grace period has ended. And this person emailed me at 12:30, right? Of course, it's not going to be there. It's past the 11:59. So when we are dealing with emotions, our amygdala sends that emotional, whatever that's your emotions, is stress, anger, frustration, whatever that might be when you get these kinds of emails from your students, and it links us into the fight or flight response, our stressed out response. And here we can decide whether to fight and argue with the student or ignore the email, right? To go away from the student. And so our sympathetic nervous system is in charge of that area of our emotions that gets us into that fighting mode or a flighting mode. We also have to have a system that calms us down, and that's the complementary system called the parasympathetic nervous system. So going back to these emails, how would we handle them now that we are a little bit calmer and now that we have our sympathetic nervous system working, and we're trying to activate the parasympathetic nervous system? So I don't know if this happens to you, but I get worked up when I see emails like this, because when you were talking about front ending a lot of the work, I give them announcements in class. I give them announcements via email. I give them announcements via Blackboard about the due dates and remind them, and still this happens, right? They don't do the work that they're supposed to do on the due date. And so I have to remind myself to activate my parasympathetic nervous system instead of writing the email right away to them and saying, no, everything was due, and then you're getting a 0, right? That's what I want to say. I want to be more professional. And I want to think about the options because, again, at the end of the day, they want to succeed in college, right? And they care about their work. So one way for me to respond to those emails without doing so in a fight or flight manner is to name what's happening in my nervous system. My nervous system is activated. I am in a fight or flight mode. And then I'm going to ask myself, is this a life-threatening emergency? Because that's what the fight or flight is. That is telling us that we're stressed out when we're seeing something that frustrates us. And if it's not a life-threatening emergency, we pause. And in that pause, we want to take a moment to help our nervous system. And when you're talking about, Chet said, we got to give ourselves some grace. This is one way to do that, to acknowledge why this is such a trigger for us. A student email or something a student says. Why is it a trigger for us when we're responding in a very quick, impulsive way? And then in that moment, we want to take some breaths. We want to think about, we are good at our job, right? The student is having their own words. They want to say what they're going to say, but you are the professional here and you are going to respond in a professional manner. You're going to notice your tendency to want to react in a certain way. You're going to step back and see things from the widest perspective possible, including giving yourself grace and giving the student grace. And more often than not, if we explain the situation to the student, I apologize that Blackboard has gone down. I'm willing to work with you, but I need to have some proof that there was an issue on Blackboard. That's going to go a longer way with students than, I don't believe you, Blackboard was working for other students and you have a 0, right? And so now the widest perspective possible to make sure that the student is successful in the class. And we want to remind ourselves, give ourselves some grace that finding a sense of safety and calm in our body will make it more likely for us to remain in connection and find better resolutions than the automatic reactivity and emotion that our nervous system wants to pull us into. So this is, again, going into the next phase of this talk, and it's going to discuss our emotional intelligence. So I'm going to drop a link right here. I've been talking for a little bit. Now I want us to kind of reflect a little bit. You've been talking to me about our grades. Now I want to talk about our emotional intelligence. So being psychology, we do some assessments. So it should take about 3 minutes. So if I put the emotional intelligence test on the chat, if you want to navigate there, and I promise it's only going to take 3 minutes. So I'll put 3 minutes on the clock now. And when you're done, you should see a results page like this. Okay, so this is my actual results. And then I will put 3 minutes on the clock here. And then we'll discuss your results if you want to share. All right. So if we could, is a link working? Can I get a thumbs up if the link is working? All right, get a nod. All right, perfect. Okay. So it's emotional intelligence test. I'll drop it again. Somebody said they didn't have it. Okay. All right. So 3 minutes. Because we're in, because we were talking about Bridgerton, I'm going to play some Bridgerton music while we're doing our test. Hopefully that'll help us get us in the mood. This is
My home, my rules. My internet, now that too. Introducing My Home from Verizon.
Here's the Bridgerton. That's too loud. All right. Playing music, yes. 3 minutes for the emotional intelligence test. That's great. If you want to drop, if you're happy with sharing your results, please go ahead and drop it like Laura did on the chat. Thank you, Laura. All right. Whoops, I'm so sorry. I turned off my timer there. Okay, wonderful. So let me get back to my screen here. Everything's great. Okay. So we've got some numbers. We've got 82, we've got 70. I got an 80, which means that I have a high emotional intelligence that tells us these characteristics, okay? So when we're talking about sense and sensibility, we're very competent. We're professors, right? We know the knowledge base, we know the topics, we know what we're supposed to talk about with the students. Awesome. Look at us. All right. We're in the everybody's above 70 here, which is awesome. So we have highly intelligent, emotionally intelligent people in our talk today. So why I want to bring this up is because when we're discussing sense and sensibility, we have the IQ to do what we're doing, right? We're teachers, we're professors, we know the knowledge base, we're teaching graduate students, we're teaching undergraduate students, we're teaching doctoral students. And then our emotional intelligence is more of our sensibility. How do we self-regulate? How do we empathize with our students? How are we self-aware? What are the social skills that we use to communicate in an effective manner? And then also, how do we motivate ourselves and our students to continue to do what we're doing, especially in light of everything that we have to do here at DSU? We've got teaching, we've got service, we've got scholarship, we've got grants, we've got research, a lot of things on our plate. And so we need to have a high IQ, and we also need to have a high EQ and some strategies to help us. Somebody said, you think you can do better. I think you're doing what you can. And then there's always room for improvement for everyone. So in terms of understanding yourself, how do you regulate your ability to manage emotions, right? And oftentimes when you have a student that questions what you're talking about, or especially if you're a new teacher, I remember I've been in I still consider myself an early career professional because it's only been within my 10-year period. So that's what early career means. At 10 years, within 10 years of after you get your terminal degree. So I still consider myself to be early career, but early teachers, those are the first 2 years of their training, may need to manage their sense of imposter syndrome, their sense of tension, their sense of, it a lot, and the students may not take you seriously because you're a younger teacher, but that is a way for you to understand your own emotions when it comes to difficult situations. So one thing that I learned when I was a new teacher also is that I have my degree, right? I have my doctorate, I have my master's, I know more than them, and and if they want to question me, especially in the policies, I have to regulate my emotions at that moment. And it motivated me, right? Talking about this motivated me to learn and go to things like professional development, about teaching and pedagogy to help me better what I need to do in the in-person classroom as well as the asynchronous classroom. So a lot of these that we talked about are executive functions. So how do we switch from our amygdala and our sympathetic nervous system so that we can talk about and utilize our frontal lobes when we're in the classroom, right? Interacting with students. And why is this important? So our EQ in the classroom, the way that we self-regulate, the way that we empathize, the way that we motivate, it has a lot of impact in our own teaching, whether that be in person or online, our classroom management techniques. Oftentimes I get really annoyed, frustrated when we have side conversations and I'm trying to talk. And I know they just want to talk about, the weekend, or they want to talk about what's going on, but that is disruptive to other students in the classroom. And so the way that we want to manage that, you can do it in a very aggressive way, or you can do it in a humorous way, or you can do it appealing to the empathy of the students, right? I understand you guys want to talk, and I know that what you're wanting to talk about is important, but I wanted to use class time a little bit more effectively. And I promise when we do group work, you'll have a chance to talk to each other, right? So giving them the opportunity, managing my emotions, whereas maybe if I was didn't know that, or I didn't learn that, I would be very, very upset. Send them out to the room, have assigned seats in the class, right? So our EQ absolutely manifests itself in our grading, our efforts, our motivation to do our own work, our interaction with our students, and our own mental health. And it's going back to giving grace to ourselves as well. And our grading does get impacted the more that we're frustrated, more burnt out, more exhausted, right? We don't tend to make very good decisions when we have our emotions running the show. So I want to talk a little bit about how all of this coincides with our insight principles at the CTL and is also relevant to our effective teaching. So insight principles, I think we see them in our exit tickets, and I wanted to bring them in here because it also can benefit from learning about our sense and sensibility. So if we want to establish an inclusive environment, we want to establish either an online or in-person community, in-person classroom that respects diverse backgrounds, needs, and abilities. Need-based, provide equitable learning experiences. Student-centered, provide tools and resources that support student success. And I have some strategies and ideas that maybe we can utilize, and I want to talk about how you do it as well in your classrooms. Innovative, be creative in planning the student learning experience. Goal-oriented, support goals of the institution, DSU. Our program, for me, it's psychology, and the students as well, whether they be psychology majors or not. High quality, provide learners skills to become productive citizens. So we're teaching them for the future, not just what they're doing in the classroom. And then technologically supported. Embrace the use of technology to enhance the learning experience. So I am going to give you, this is a worksheet that we're going to do in a moment, but I wanted to give you some ideas of how you have inclusive, the insight principles, inclusive, need-based, student-centered, innovative, goal-oriented, high quality, and how you infuse it with your grace and your grades now and what you're doing. And how can we improve it if there are things that you want to improve or modify for the next semester. So one of the things that I do, I want to put attention on is utilizing data to make decisions for class policies. One of the biggest, what's it called? I don't know what the word is, but pushbacks, there it is, pushback that I get from students is the attendance policy, especially after COVID. So I wanted to take data to see if attendance actually helps students with their success in the classroom. So I took data. My independent variables are courses, and this is aggregate data from different sections of the same course, with attendance policies and then without attendance. So independent variable, I think we all know that in research methods, it's what you're manipulating. So you're going to have a comparison group, something without that independent variable and something with that independent variable, right? So the presence of or the absence of. So this is the attendance policy. My dependent variables are teaching effectiveness, operationally defined by my response rates and the course evaluation ratings, as well as the actual course evaluation ratings out of 5, from 0 to 5. And then for student success dependent variable, their average final grades. And again, this is aggregate, not individual grades, but aggregate throughout each section. And so you can see here, those with attendance had higher response rates for my course evaluations than those who didn't have attendance policies. So in spring 2024, so 2 sections. So all of this are introduction to psychology, right? So I didn't even have differences in terms of class, like upperclassmen, underclassmen. These are all introduction to psychology courses. So a mix of psychology majors and other major disciplines in there, but mostly first semester freshmen. And you can see that the response rates were higher when there was attendance in the policy. The course evaluation ratings were also really high. I didn't do the averages for this. I'm thinking about doing that now as I'm doing the talk, but you can see from the individual courses here that, oh, thank you, Amy, no worries. So individual courses here, there are more, my class was rated higher when there was attendance than when there wasn't. And then lastly, going here to their final average grade, classes who had an attendance policy, I didn't do significance for this, but in terms of data, right? Just from seeing the data, higher scores than if there was not an attendance policy. So why is that important? Because I'm going to continue to take data on my classes and see if I will, I'm going to continue to implement attendance because it does help and the data supports that. Another thing that I wanted to put your attention to is to include intercampus, interdisciplinary, and interdepartmental opportunities for our students. So I have some other data here. I work closely with the Integrated Academic Student Success Office, IASS, and they have a supplementer instructor program. I also do an experiential learning with the Charlton School, which has a college level partnership with us through different classes. And then I also have an honor section for introduction of psychology. And so I wanted to differentiate all these different interdepartmental opportunities that I'm giving to my classes. And luckily enough, I had a baseline group in spring 2024 that didn't have any sorts of those interdepartmental or interdisciplinary opportunities. And again, I measured them on response rates, course evaluation ratings, and average final grade. And then here are the results. So in terms of response rates, those who had experiential learning had 100%. The comparison was the next highest. Those with an SI had 62.5, and those with an SI and experiential learning had 39. That's a response rate. For the evaluation ratings, the baseline, the comparison group, along with the honors and the experiential learning with the Charlton had the highest, but everything was above or at 4.5. And then average final grades, those who are in the honors program, of course, probably because they're higher students to begin with, had 98.5 at final grades. So a lot of them had A's in the class, and then followed by those who have an SI session with B's and the rest there with C's. So what does that lead me to believe? I'm going to continue to do my SI sessions, continue to work with different programs because it helps our students. I know we're running low on time. We have 7 minutes left. I did want to give you a copy of this for your own. And I'm going to put mine up in case you want an example, but I don't know if we have time to do this, but I was going to give you time to come up with your own practices, how you balance grace and grades currently, and if you wanted to revise any of your practices for the spring 2024. So I know we don't have time. Some people are already logging off, so I'm going to go to my key takeaway slide. Faculty need to have both sense and sensibility, IQ and EQ when teaching, interacting, grading, and making decisions. Working on getting a higher EQ through different strategies and learning yourself and doing these assessments can benefit students and faculty alike. And interdisciplinary, interdepartmental partnerships across downtown DSU as well as main campus can benefit students in terms of pedagogy, in terms of their persistence, and then inform us as teachers of our pedagogy. And faculty can make data-driven decisions that affect our preparation time, our course policies, and our student outcomes. And if you have any questions, these are my references. And then also, please do not hesitate to email me if you want to talk more about pedagogy, more about emotional intelligence, or different strategies of how you can improve your insight principles in your learning. So thank you so much. And I have some time for questions here, if you have any. Anyone, please feel free to put it on the chat or unmute yourself. Anything at all. And then Kyle put in our exit ticket. So please feel free to do that as well. All righty.
So Dr. Mendoza, I was
Yes.
going to say thank you so much for this presentation today. As a professor, right, what do you see the biggest challenges to be with these strategies that you employ?
Oh, wonderful. So part of this, I'm going to go back to, yes, I need a visual. All of this. Yeah, a lot of this is time. So when we're talking about prep time and course preparation time, so time because we have to build the relationships, right? I have to talk with the SI coordinator. I have to give input to who my SI is, my supplemental instructor. I have to train them. We have to be on the same page. I have to let the students know what the SI program is. So a lot of that is acknowledging, letting people be aware that these programs exist and getting the buy-in from students so that they go and see the SI. And then with experiential learning, also building those relationships and that timing. And then, so the time, the building relationships, and then also the time because you have to evaluate if it's going well. So some students have given me feedback where they don't believe the PsychPals program is working currently because it's too much just sitting around and talking. But the Charlton students need that interaction with same age but intellectually advanced peers, inclusion opportunities. But they gave me feedback that it was too much time talking. They don't even talk that much with their regular friends, right? Like, because they do something else, like, here, let's watch a video together, or here, let's play a game together, or we're going to do something. So that time in terms of evaluating what's going right, what's going wrong, and then how we can improve. So a lot of time. Thank you for that question. Yes. Why do I continue to do it? Because it helps the students, and the data shows that. All righty. Anyone else? Excellent. I know other people had to go. I know some people have class at 2.
Yeah.
All righty. Excellent.
Okay.
Chat, do you have anything you want to add or question?
Importantly, I guess what we discuss is highly relevant to all of us. And I believe we are doing this. The more we learn, the more we grow here. This insight thing gave me a little bit further thinking opportunity today. Though I used to think I was a pretty good teacher, I sometimes feel like being flexible probably diverts me from that goal orientation, and that causes some problem to me. I was reflecting a lot. So thank you. I do not have any other things to aid or subtract. It was a beautiful presentation, Abby.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love talking about pedagogy. And when you're talking about, there's always something that we can revise or modify or think about or evaluate. I also realize that I need to have more hands-on interactive activities, especially for my introduction to psychology students. They like it when we watch videos, but not too long. But I also had to evaluate that not too long, because if it's too long, they're gonna fall asleep. And that has happened. They're gonna fall asleep. And so a lot of it as teaching it's experimentation, right? And observation of our students. I find it easier to do that with in-person. So I don't have a lot of experience with asynchronous online. So trying to develop writing skills in doctoral students or graduate students and only online, I think that's difficult. And that is hard because I don't know, like, you're not seeing their body language, you're not seeing their verbal, and then it's less time for talks that maybe are not structured, because I don't know how to, I don't have any strategies for that, because again, I don't teach online. But is that done through discussion boards? Like, will they just talk about things that maybe you don't ask them if they don't have a prompt?
It's not that easy on these nowadays in grad programs, which are really on online spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And the rigor, what you are talking about, these things are pretty hard nowadays to maintain, and that's a huge struggle. Why I came to this session was something to really sit down and listen, and basically we all go through all kinds of things, and grad programs requirements and how flexible we need to be, those things required me to really attend this thing. And you are right, it's not that we probably feel as professors feel more burnout because we feel not that confidence that our students are actually learning. But that's not the only burden we have to take, and we have to take so many different things. So here I'm thinking, Amber is there. I consider her my colleague, and we teach the same program a lot. She probably will speak more. This is some of the courses, for example, those research courses, it's not that easy, and we really get what we are doing here. Yeah, that's true.
I think I would agree. I think, but let me say, Dr. Mendoza teaches undergrad students. We have graduate students. So the
Yes.
expectation is that they're coming in already with these skills.
Yes.
So there's no way that you've progressed through undergraduate and your master's degree and you still are lacking these skills. So there is an expectation as a professor that my job is just to come in to teach you the content that you need to know and that you have all the other skills. But there are some challenges, especially when you're dealing with those international student populations. Now, that becomes a struggle because there's different writing styles, there's different verbiage and language barriers and all that other stuff. And so you have to be cognizant of a lot of that when guiding these students, right? Because, and I always tell them, if your research is not relevant in your country, then why are you doing it? If you don't have an issue, if you don't plan on moving to the States, why is your research focused on the United States and not in your home country? You essentially, we want to be able to prepare these global leaders. So, and that a part of that is also changing their mindset, because the other part is it's not just what we're feeding you, that it's hard for them to make those connections. And so that's kind of where that difference comes in. But you think that they will come in already with those skills and that it should be easy breezy. Right? And it's not always that way. So we've had some good ones, you've had some bad ones, but I mean, that's where it happens. So, but again, also, how do we make sure that those students who are overseas or in those international sources receiving these same resources that as our residential students or the students that are here? And so that's also a bigger challenge. Like, how do we continue to give them that supplemental instruction besides making yourself available? But as, busy adults, they're not going to necessarily, ring your phone or send you an email and say, I need help or whatever the case may be. Because again, they're only with you for 8 weeks. It's kind of hard to really make that.
And we are dealing with the population's accomplished professionals with titles. And they're not going to say they don't know something. Honestly, that's the biggest challenge Amber and I face, I think, every day. So anyway, it's a great conversation. I have to go. I have another meeting, but thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amber. I need to come back to you. I'm telling you. I'm sending you an email with that document.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one.